Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Revolution Recap. The Revolution added another 3 points to their tally on the season, winning 3-2 in Chicago, redeeming themselves after that disappointing season opener back in April, I think it was April. The Revolution now have set their franchise record for most wins in a season, most points in a season, and certainly are getting right back on the correct path after a frustrating 1-1 draw last Saturday. I am Greg Johnstone. Joining me today is Chris Lucas. Chris, how you doing? What was your key takeaway from tonight's match?
Greg, doing fantastic. Look, Revolution have clinched a playoff spot with 7 games remaining. I don't know if I ever dreamed I would be saying that at this point in the season. So, yeah, doing fantastic. No complaints on this side. I mean, there's probably some complaints about the game that we could talk about, but overall, not doing fantastic, doing great. My key takeaway, look, all match I was just kind of looking at this game and saying, there's one player that this team is really missing tonight, and it's really showing. He ended up getting subbed on late in the match in the 84th minute. That's DeJuan Jones, of course. I didn't think he was going to get subbed on. I thought maybe Buxa would be the late sub, the last sub that the Revolution would use. I was wrong, and I'm okay being wrong with that because I thought DeJuan Jones was definitely a needed piece. I don't want to detract too much from Mafla because I don't think he did necessarily too much wrong, but I don't think he did a whole lot to really help the Revolution. And it really showed coming down Chicago's right-hand side. They were delivering a lot of crosses down that way because Mafla doesn't have the same skill set to really track back like DeJuan Jones does. And Mafla is also not necessarily up as high up the field to be able to press from that position as DeJuan Jones is. And just missing DeJuan all match, I think, really was a big problem for the Revolution. And Chicago capitalized on it. The second goal that they scored came from that side and many other crosses as well. Like really, really good crosses that you're saying these should not be coming into the box right in front of Matt Turner. Chicago missed several chances as well from crosses coming in from that side. So DeJuan Jones, I think, is possibly criminally underrated within MLS. Maybe not so much in the New England Revolution circle. I think a lot of the fans understand his value. But yeah, my takeaway 100% tonight is DeJuan Jones and the fact that this team really needs him if they're going to be contending for a championship.
Yeah, and what's interesting is one person I wanted to highlight, and we talked about this a little bit in the pregame Twitter spaces too, is Christian Mafla. And this was a really, really big game for him. And I said, I really don't know what to expect from him tonight. But one thing that was kind of brought up, and I believe Matt made this point as well, again, another correct point was Mafla is probably going to be pushing up. He's probably going to be getting involved in the offense a little bit. And I think what we saw a little bit with some of those defensive breakdowns, like the second goal, I know that went down that right side where Mafla should have been. But one thing I noted was I was kind of trying to pay attention, and I might go back and rewatch some of this to kind of pay a little bit more attention to. But Mafla, when he's pushing up, where's Luis Caicedo? And I kind of noticed, I think it might have been that Mafla and Caicedo have never played with one another. Was Caicedo going to be able to drop back into the spaces that Mafla is leaving open when he pushes up? So I think maybe that whole side was just a little discombobulated. It kind of gave me flashbacks of the first 10 minutes of the season when Tejan Buchanan was at left back, and that just seemed like left wing. Just seemed like a bit of a mix-up with him and DeJuan Jones. So maybe that Mafla-Caicedo pairing just didn't get off on the right foot and seemed a little lost at times. Overall, I thought Christian Mafla had some good moments, had some not-so-great moments. I think everyone will point out that I believe it was his man that conceded the first goal for Chicago. But overall, Mafla had 71% pass accuracy, which is only 10 for 14, which is not great. He had a couple of decent crosses. He was 0 for 2 on crosses, but one of them I noted, he had a kind of a weird spin move down there in the 44th minute and then beat his man, kind of swung it in. It looked like it just barely missed Kizza, who was on the far post, or at least on the far side of goal. So I give positive marks for that play there. I believe the second cross was headed away by a defender. It led to Teal Bunbury kind of gathering it, and it led to the Carlos Gil kind of weak right-footed shot. So he had 2 pretty dangerous crosses, but that was really it for offense. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more from him. No key passes. I believe defensively, too, was not great. He was 5 for 13 on duels. He did have 6 clearances, but yeah, he 1 for 3.
If you want to talk about his involvement in the game, too, he had 39 touches, and DeJuan Jones, when he came in, he had 8 touches. So you put that together, that's 40-something touches. I'm not doing math right now, but it's 41 touches, I think, or so for that left back position.
No.
DeJuan Jones, when he plays 90 minutes, he gets about somewhere between 95 and 105 touches a game. So that's a huge change to this offense, as well as the defense, I guess. As far as where they're playing through, they played through DeJuan Jones a ton, and the fact that they didn't have him out there, I think, really was felt.
I'm going to give Mafla. I agree with everything you just said. I'm willing to give Mafla a bit of a pass on this game because this was a weakened lineup. It just seemed like the Revs as a whole were booting it long. They were in clearance mode a long time. I kind of wanted to see what Mafla could do a little bit more offensively, and you're right. He didn't put in as many touches or as many attacking actions that we were kind of hoping to see from him. But I think this game was the Revs scored early, kind of dropped back, really played, I don't want to say conservatively, but they kind of played on their back foot throughout the remainder of that first half. There were just swaths of time where this team just seemed outmatched by Chicago. And I know it's a road game. I know it's a weakened lineup, but there was a lot of booting it long and just, please, for the love of God, get the ball out of the box today, which, wasn't pleasing. So, yeah, I think Mafla's numbers aren't going to look great with DeJuan Jones, as you said. But I don't think he's taken any minutes from DeJuan Jones. I think your overall takeaway is correct that this team really missed DeJuan Jones tonight, and he is an offensive weapon, and we don't know how good we have it. But I'm still going to be a little bullish on Christian Mafla. The Mafla, I'm included in the Mafla hive. I've learned that is a thing. So I am pro Mafla. I'm in the Mafla hive. I'm fine with him as a backup left back. I'm not saying he deserves minute over DeJuan, but tonight I saw some positives, some negatives, and overall I don't think I learned a whole ton from him. So. Anyway, that might be a little more of an extensive conversation with Christian Mafla than we were expecting to do, Chris. But
absolutely was, yeah.
Well, I guess my key takeaway, you mentioned missing DeJuan Jones. I wanted to point out that I think that the Revs missed two other people that I think are a little bit more valuable than we expected. One is Matt Polster, who I think everyone loves and knows is kind of that anchor to the midfield. There were just times that this team could just not carry the ball out of their final third. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on Matt Polster tonight. But tonight was the first night we saw the Henry Kessler-John Bell pairing. By my math, which might be wrong, this is the first time in 35 games that Andrew Farrell did not start. And I believe this is the first time in 44 games Andrew Farrell did not make an appearance. So
I'm pretty sure these are the first minutes that Andrew Farrell has missed all 2021 season. So it's pretty impressive by him.
And Bruce said earlier in the season that he would go to a Kessler-Bell pairing eventually. He did say earlier in the season, we made those comments back in May, back when it seemed like there was a Kessler-Bell competition for that second center back spot, that he wanted to get Bell more involved. He wanted to establish a third center back. And he said, eventually we'll see a Kessler-Bell pairing. And then we went most of the season without seeing it. And Bruce kind of said that, both of these guys are young center backs. We need a veteran presence like Andrew Farrell back there. And I think tonight we might have seen what this back line looks like without having a veteran in the center of the back line there. Obviously, Kessler and Bell, I think, had some pretty good moments, notably that first goal. But there was a lot of scrambling. There was a lot of last-ditch defense. The second goal was horrific, and I don't want to pin that specifically on the center back pairing, but you wonder if you have a leader like Andrew Farrell back there, if that plays out a little bit differently. I don't know. I can't make that statement, but that was a disaster. There was the play where Matt Turner is kind of off his line. He's scrambling, and Kessler kicks it away from off the back line. But that play, really, as it developed, it just seemed like Revolution players were running everywhere. And I don't know, just seemed like a lot of scrambling tonight. Didn't seem organized at all. It might be, the midfield. You might be missing Matt Polster. It might be because you're missing Andrew Farrell. I'm not totally sure. I'd have to go back and watch this one again. But just seemed like the Revolution were missing two very big veteran presences in the field today. And, for a weak team like Chicago, who hasn't scored in 3 straight games. I believe they've scored 1 goal in 5 games, and they're coming out of this game with, I believe, an expected goal. Chicago had 3.26 expected goals tonight. I really poor.
They dominated.
Yeah, not a great performance, and we can say it's a B team lineup, and certainly there's B players in the midfield, but I don't think a back line of Christian Mafla, Henry Kessler, John Bell, and AJ De Garza. Obviously, the outside backs are your backups, but a Kessler Bell pairing is not necessarily a huge downgrade. So I was not encouraged by that tonight, and as I say, I think they're missing some veteran presences out there.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about the missing of the players, we've highlighted three players specifically, and it's Matt Polster, it was Andrew Farrell, and DeJuan Jones, and we're talking all defensive players here, and that's been the big issue. And I don't think maybe putting a real serious eye on the defense is a bad way to look at this, because that really was a lot of the issues of tonight. Matt Turner also came up with several huge saves. Doing Matt Turner things, the things that he does. Henry Kessler got, according to the Chicago broadcast, the save of the match, which was a fantastic save by him, getting back to get back in goal once Turner had a bad deflection that teed up a nice shot for Chicago. But yeah, I think the story of the match is that there was key defenders that were missing, and it really did hurt the Revolution.
Absolutely. I will say that this is typically when we've done a Twitter Spaces, it's been a little bit more Q&A. If you guys want to join in on the conversation, if you're listening in and you want to voice an opinion, you want to get a takeoff, feel free. I think you can request to listen and we can get you involved. I already see Sam Minton is here. We're going to have to get him on soon. I guess the press conference is over. But we also have some listener questions that we will run throughout this whatever we call it, podcast Twitter Spaces. So Sam, I'm going to bring you in. I might regret this. I'm going to have to relearn how to mute people, but I guess you let me on your Twitter Spaces, so I'll let you come on yours. Sam, how's it going?
I'm doing good. I hope you guys can hear me well. I'm making my post-game walk to the convenience store to get Monster to stay up for the night and write all night. So doing good, but I wanted to ask specifically, because I was talking Bruce Arena and Henry Kessler, Teal Bunbury, but Luis Caicedo, and I had great things to say about him. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on Luis Caicedo.
We also got this question from Mike Kennedy on Twitter, who says he wants our take on Caicedo's performance. Did he do enough to earn more minutes? We also got a question on Discord from Tejan Stan asking us our thoughts on Caicedo and Captoom. And I don't know, Chris, if you disagree with this one too much. I thought Captoom kind of gave us more of the same, not flashy, kind of there. I didn't, he is what it is. I can pull up some specific numbers, but I don't think we learned a whole lot about Captoom today. I think he's kind of proven himself to be a depth central midfielder. So I don't have a ton on him. Caicedo looked pretty decent. As I said at the top of this, I kind of want to go back and take a second look to see if he kind of had some trouble with when Mafla would overlap with him, his ability to kind of get back and fill in those spaces, because that's what he did really, really well prior to his injury. But the fact that he went 90 minutes is extremely, extremely encouraging. Bruce noted he went 90 minutes last week, and the plan was not to have him go a full 90 minutes. This game, they want him to go 45 to 60. He ended up going a full 90. So 90 minutes in back-to-back weeks is really important. Decent game stats-wise. I don't think there's anything I need to point out. 70% pass accuracy, most of that actually in the opposition half. 16 of his 21 passes were in the opposition half. One key pass, 49 touches, 6 for 14 on duels, 6 clearances, 3 interceptions, 3 recoveries, 1 for 3 on aerials, 3 for 3 on tackles. So overall, okay game from Luis Caicedo. Certainly a lot further along than where I thought he would be. Chris, any thoughts on Luis Caicedo?
Yeah, I thought Caicedo had a good game. I don't think that there was necessarily anything notable from his performance tonight, but the fact that this was his first game back in almost 2 years, it was October 6th, 2019 was the last time that he played an MLS caliber match. Of course, he did play a match for Revs 2 1 week ago, but this is his first time back with the first team. I guess you can't expect a whole lot. We could talk about preseason, I guess, too. He did play a little bit in preseason before he got injured again. I'm just happy to see 27 back out on the pitch. It's been a long time. And I saw a little bits of flashes of what I remember seeing from Luis Caicedo, a little bit of that tenacity and like that real imposing force. Despite his small frame, he's still such an imposing central defender or midfield defender, whatever you want to classify him as. But it's just the way that he actually was looking like himself more than he wasn't was you used the word encouraging earlier, and I'm going to just reiterate that it was just very encouraging. I think it was just an encouraging performance overall from Luis Caicedo.
Yep, I'm still not sure what his role is going to be because it does seem like a cluttered midfield, but the fact that he is there and the fact that he is an option is very promising. Again, the team looked a little bit lost at times, and so I can't give full positive marks. It seemed like that midfield at times just wasn't able to carry the ball out of their final third. But yeah, decent performance, I'd say, from Luis Caicedo. I'm not going to give him positive marks, but I don't want to give him negative marks either.
Right. You mentioned Captum as well, and I wanted to quickly touch on Captum, and I thought that he actually has a lot more to prove than a lot of other players on this roster, especially with the way that Bruce has talked about him recently. And the fact that he went out there, I thought he had a good game overall. Again, not necessarily an impactful game where you're saying, wow, Captum did such a great job, but he was quietly okay. And I think that's what you would hope is the worst that you'd see out of a player. And the fact that we're seeing that out of him, maybe he's not necessarily getting involved in the attack tonight, but he did not make any mistakes. He did well passing, 93%, 28 out of 30. I'll take that out of my midfield. I would like to see him get a bit more touches. He had 54 on the night, which is still a lot of touches. So a lot of the play did run through Captum. But of course, once Carles Heel got on, the play went straight through Carles and not through Captum. But yeah, I want to quickly touch on him and just say I thought that he did have a good match since you brought him up.
Yeah, 54 touches from Captum. You mentioned the pass accuracy. He was also 7 for 10 on duels, so 6 recoveries. So he actually did have a very solid game. Now that I'm looking at the stats, I think the stats are better than the eye test and watching it once through. Yeah. So I'll give Captum a little bit of good marks. Again, it just doesn't seem to make an impact. So I don't know. Jake Catnice, also of the Bent Musket, has joined us. He wants to say something. Jake, you're already a speaker, although you need to unmute your mic. So Jake, how you doing tonight? Anything you want to add? And also, just to let you know, we do have a listener that is counting the number of times the word Connecticut is said. So let's try to keep that at a minimum from now on.
Are we sure we don't want to mention the word Connecticut like an extra couple dozen times? I can certainly do that.
We said Connecticut 27 times, and I want to keep it in the single digit. And right now we're at 3. And you haven't even brought up the one seed Connecticut Sun in the WNBA playoffs. So you only have so many more times you can say Connecticut, Jake.
Oh, exactly. Well, here I'll be brief because I'm actually getting ready for work, and I'm disappointed that Sam runs on Monster and not Diet Mountain Dew and Popeyes, which is the choice at least that I'm about to make in about 30 minutes here. I agree with the overall thought on Captum. He's fine. The midfield lacked decisiveness throughout the night, and I don't know if that's a tactical problem, a personnel problem. Someone needs to step up and be the guy. And right now you've got 4 players, one of which Scotty Caldwell, is not going to be the guy. He's not there to do that. Someone from the Captum, Caicedo, Tristison triangle there needed to be the guy in the first hour. Tristison tries, delivered some good set pieces, but we've seen this time and time again when the Revs run out a flatter midfield, particularly with Captum and Maciel as partners. This time it was Caicedo and Caicedo and Captum, excuse me. There's not that energy. There's not that decisive, I'm the one going forward. I'm the guy who's going to make the passes. I'm the guy who's going to be running the offense and the facilitator up to the attacking group. And the Revs have struggled with that when they don't have a Polster or a Heel or someone else on the field to really do that. When you have Tajon dropping into that midfield spot, Tajon can do that. When Tristison's playing as the shuttler, Tristison can do that. So I don't know if it was a personnel problem or a tactical problem. It's something that's been an issue for the Revs and they've struggled with during this heavy squad rotation. So I don't think statistically anyone was bad today, but when you look at the team as a whole, there wasn't a whole lot of good either.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% too. And Jake, I don't know when you came in, but as I say, I think they really missed Matt Polster and Andrew Farrell tonight, especially Matt Polster too. I think Scott Caldwell was supposed to be the veteran presence, kind of connecting that back line, kind of anchoring that midfield diamond with Polster out. And that yellow card, I think, was the adjustment that Bruce Arena had to make. He originally said that Caicedo was coming out 45 to 60 minutes. and they had to make some subs. Well, that's the way he put it. They had to make some subs, which could allude to the fact that it was 1-1 at halftime. It also could allude to the fact that Scott Caldwell had a yellow card. So I bet that their plans, there's a wrench thrown into their plans there a little bit. And that midfield, it might be that we have some people coming back. It might be that we have some people not getting enough minutes. But that combination of players was not a winner in my book.
No, and I also think the other thing we're going to underrate is giving up a goal 5 minutes prior to halftime, and also a very soft goal by Revolution standards. I still haven't seen a good replay of that. I don't know if that ball comes off of AJ De La Garza or if Matt Turner gets wrong-footed by it, but it seemed very odd that was the type of chance we gave up for that equalizer. I think that also played into the hands of the halftime subs. I think if it was 1-0 going into halftime, maybe you can hold off on Scott Caldwell immediately getting yanked at halftime. Maybe you can wait the extra 15 minutes, and then maybe it is Polster coming into the game and not Carlos Seal, because now you're winning. You can actually defend the lead instead of, no, we have to go out and win the game. And then we had to do it twice. So, again, overall, not the worst performance of the year, but it's certainly in the bottom. It's certainly not as good as I think the first game in Chicago when we tied that game, but it's certainly not as bad as maybe the road trips to Dallas or Nashville. But it's wasn't great. Take the 3 points, get back home, beat Orlando a couple of times here down the stretch, and
take the 3 points and get the hell out of Chicago. I think
pretty
that's
much
what Bruce said after the game. He said, "We'll take 3 points and get the hell out of here." So, and you know what? Anytime you win 3 points on the road, I think you got to be happy. And looking at this expected goal difference here, let me pull it up again. Chicago 3.26. The Revs have 1.55. You can really make the argument that the Revs should have maybe come away with a point, but you'd rather come away with 3 and earn 1 as opposed to Saturday when you come away with 1 and you earned 3. So we did get a question here too while we're talking about kind of the issues in that midfield. Mike Kennedy asked us on Twitter on the Chicago's second goal, whose responsibility was it at the top of the box? Jake, I've only seen the replay one time, and to be honest with you, it's such a mess. I kind of have to break it down a little bit further, but I got to think that there's a defensive midfielder, whether it's Captum or Caicedo, someone's got to be there, right? I think Caicedo was pulled out left. I believe Mafla was up a little bit. I don't know. And it was right after the restart, so I don't know why Mafla was up there. So maybe it's Mafla for starting off this chain of events. But Caicedo gets drawn out to kind of the left wing. So either, I mean, Captum or someone's got to be back there, right? I got to think that a midfielder's got to fill in that space when defensive line is kind of shifting over, right?
Yeah, you know what? There was a handful of us trying to figure that one out on the second goal. I don't think we've ever actually solved the answer. I just think it's a complete shutoff after the restart from the kickoff on the Revs go-ahead goal, and they're just asleep. I think that's just a team-wide just failure. I don't want to blame anyone in particular because I think there's a lot of blame to go around there. There was more than one free runner in that box, and then also more than one free trailer at the top of the box on that play. So there's a lot of bad on that, and I don't know if that's something that more the regular back line fixes or Matt Polster himself fixes. But yeah, it's just a couple of very just odd goals to give up. Like Chicago deserved 2 goals on the night. I don't think they necessarily deserved those 2 particular goals, and nor do I think Matt Turner or the Revs should be happy about the way that those were allowed. But it wasn't a bad night defensively. There were a lot of good things. Kessler off the line clearing the ball. Matt Turner came up with some saves late after. Again, not I don't think his best game on the year, but another player who probably deserves at least a game off at some point here down the stretch because he's played every game this year. He's been available for the Revs or the USA. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I think if they had tied this game and beaten Columbus, I have a better feeling. This one feels different because I don't think we earned this one. We stole this one, and I'm kind of okay with that because it's Chicago. But a lot of things to work on. But again, with heavy squad rotation, the stuff that you're working on is, I think, just overall team cohesion. You're expecting a lot from guys who aren't supposed to be starting, and you had 9 guys in the field who I would classify weren't regular starters this year, but 3 or 4 of them kind of are. Captum definitely has been a regular starter. Teal Bunbury, I don't think, isn't a regular starter. He just doesn't have the minutes this year.
Right.
I don't know, just a lot of weirdness today, a lot of weirdness in the last week. But I think if the results were flipped and we'd beaten Columbus and tied this game, I don't know if I'd be more upset otherwise, because the performance today felt we could have drawn tonight. It would have been fine. But I think you had to go out and beat a Chicago team that, quite frankly, is just not good. And while they played well and they deserved at least, I think, a share of the points, they, also a lot of mistakes in the back the Revs did not take advantage of right away.
Right. And I want to point out, too, that Any Revs UK Mike, who I believe is in on this, he's here. He actually just retweeted himself and tagged us in this photo. So go to his Twitter account. He's got a still shot of that play in the 63rd minute there, where it looks like you have 4 Revolution players kind of combining around a guy with the ball, and then there's 3 wide open Chicago players. That ball could have gone to any of them, and it probably would have ended badly for the Revolution. Mm-hmm. So just a mess all over the place.
Yeah, I could speak to that play too, because I was just recently at my son's kindergarten level soccer match, and when the ball goes into one location, all the players seem to converge right around that ball, and I think that play is what the Revolution tried to execute, and they failed.
Yeah. Not good when we're comparing this to youth soccer.
No.
I do want to bring in someone who called that this was going to be a weird 3-2 MLS weird midweek game. Matt Zitka, president of the Midnight Riders, is joining us today. Thank you for joining us, Matt. Nostradamus himself, completely calling this one down to a T. Matt, what are your thoughts here?
Well. Who could have predicted such a scoreline? My goodness. What a wild game.
We did not get the 2 Seal Bunbury goals, though. I don't know if that was specifically your prediction or not. I thought we were going to get it at the end, but we
that was not my prediction, but I would have loved that also. 2 for Teal always. But my main takeaway is that it's time for Brian Bolello and Jonathan Kraft to start looking into local sculptors, because I'm ready to build the Carlos Hill statue tomorrow. Like, let's just start working on it. He's that good. There's just never been a player like this on the Revs ever, and yeah, I'm ready to build a statue now.
My phone cut out there for a second, but I assume you want to build a statue for Carlos Hill. Is that what's happening?
That is absolutely correct.
I'm for it.
It's 10:58 p.m.
That's Jake.
Yes.
All right. Yes. Muting everyone. Mute everyone. All right. Mute everyone. Yeah. Build the statue. I'm all for building the statue. When the Revs break ground on that stadium, that random Twitter account's friend who knows Jonathan Kraft, he confirmed it. There's going to be an Everett stadium built. We all know that's happening. You have to have Carlos Hill statue right outside of it. Just name it Carlos Hill Stadium. I think that's a completely reasonable thing to do. It's funny, too, because we actually had an episode, it was during the pandemic, so it's about a year and a half old. And Jake was on that episode. It was me, Sean Donahue, Brian O'Connell, Jake Katniss, and we talked about the best Revolution roster. We had the best 23-man Revolution roster, and we debated whether or not Carlos Hill, who with only 1 season under his belt, deserves to be on that team. And here we are 18 months later, and I don't think there's any argument that you can't have him on this team, on the all-time great Revolution team. What an absolutely incredible player this guy is. I think you can really make the argument that he is skill-wise the best player the Revolution have ever had. I still think if you're talking about the greatest Revolution player ever, you still have to give a little bit to longevity and records and whatnot. So I think that Shalry Joseph and Taylor Twellman certainly are I'd still put him above Carlos Hill. But just in terms of talent, this guy took 3 points tonight. This game completely changed the second he came in. So I'm with you on that one, Matt. Build the statue.
Yeah, it was just a complete immediate change in just the style of play of the game. The second he came on, he just single-handedly changes the shape once he's on there. He just kept finding that pocket sort of on the right side of the 18-yard box over and over and over, and looked terrifying every single time. It's just, he's really something else. And then finally got the deserved goal at the very end for him.
And what's crazy too is I think he's such a good passer. I think people are waiting to see where he's going to pass the ball to, that when he does shoot, it actually kind of catches the keeper off guard a little bit. The keeper got a hand to that one,
right?
But I think he was ready to dive across the box and try to knock a ball away from getting to Teal Bunbury.
It reminded me a lot of the goal Landon Donovan scored against Slovenia in the 2010 World Cup, where it was just like, first of all, just a leader just deciding to make it happen by himself when the team couldn't get it done on the day. And it's just the same kind of goal as like everyone thinks he's going to cross, waiting for the cross, and just roofs it near a post in that same spot. So having flashbacks to that moment. But yeah, just a real winner's goal, a real leader's goal.
And instead of Slovenia, it was against Slonina. So, Gabby Slonina, I want to give a shout out to him as well, too, because that 17-year-old keeper really played overall a very good game, I thought, a very well-poised game for a 17-year-old. So
I'll also say, when you want to win MVP or a big individual award, you need a big moment, and that was a big moment. I don't think stat-wise Carlos Gil's credentials are any much different than they were 2 hours ago, but that is a big-time moment, as Matt says, and that is putting the team on your back and going out and winning the game. So, great job by Carlos Gil to take 2 points for the Revolution tonight. I did get a question on Twitter from Michelle, who is saying she can't request to speak because Twitter on computer is not great. That is true. I think you have to be on your phone to request, Michelle. So if you switch to the phone, you can join us. But if not, we can reply here. But she says, on this topic, do you think the Revs' tendency to shut down and go to sleep after a goal is going to bite us in the playoffs? That's a very great question. Chris, what are your thoughts? I think maybe it's a little different with some veteran leadership out there, but I want your take on this if you're concerned about the Revs going to sleep and falling asleep in the middle of the game.
Yeah. Yes and no. Like you're saying, I think it's a bit of different personnel, right? The everyday starters are not necessarily out there. Specifically, was it the second goal was scored about a minute after? And so the only real starters that we had out there, I guess, were Henry Kessler, Matt Turner, Carlos Gil, and Gustavo Bo, which, of course, those players you don't expect to be turning it off at any point in the match. But there was a lot of inexperienced, or I don't want to use inexperienced. I think that's a bad word to use it right now. But players that have a few minutes overall this year, and I think that really played a part in it. They really seemed to just take a deep sigh of relief once the Revs went up 2-1, but there's still a lot of time left in the match. And so, of course, it does make me worry. There was 62nd minute, Teal Bunbury scored, 64th minute, Gaston Jimenez scored to level it for Chicago. And that absolutely concerns me to know that there are players on the roster that maybe have that mentality of to take a breather when MLS is kind of relentless. You can't really stop. You got to keep going for a full 90. And this is a perfect example of why that is. So I know Bruce is going to address that. I'm sure that he's already made it known to several of the players. It's just a matter of how much that's going to stick and what's going to happen going forward if the Revs are in another situation like this. So it's something that concerns me, but it's not high on my list of concerns right now.
Yeah, and I don't usually like to say they just kind of stopped paying attention or weren't focused. But that goal, right after you score that second goal, that's when you have to lock it down and play firm and not make mistakes. And then to come out and play and concede that second goal the way they did, I think you could poll anyone in the Revolution locker room and they will all say the exact same thing, that is inexcusable and probably not the best effort on that play there. I think they just got caught up in the moment and kind of probably just assumed that second goal was going to be the game winner, and they were level a moment later. So not great. Just not great. I hate to say that it's going to cost them, or that's a big concern. But you want to have those mistakes midweek games against Chicago than 2 months from now in the playoffs. I can say
Absolutely.
that, and as I say, I bet Bruce is going to, as you say, be showing that one a lot and making sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I'm sure many lessons were learned tonight. So.
Real quick, Mike Kennedy also said Henry Kessler is his man of the match. Yes or no, Chris? Do you agree with that assessment that Kessler deserves man of the match tonight?
Yeah, I'll give it to Kessler. He put in a full 90, solid effort. He scored the opening goal in the 11th minute, and he saved a goal. I don't know what minute that was in, but it was just an impressive performance overall for him. I thought he was really solid at the back. And he really showed why he is going to be the future of this Revolution team. Henry Kessler, man of the match. I'm 100% on board with that. I understand why everyone might want to say Carlos Heel. He got the game-winning goal. The game really changed once he came in. But I thought Henry Kessler, I don't think you could blame either of the goals on Henry Kessler or many, if any, of the chances that Chicago really had tonight on Henry Kessler. So he would be my man of the match as far as individual performance goes, that even though the scoreline would maybe tell you to look otherwise.
Yeah, I think you can make a very good argument for Carlos Heel. And Matt Turner had some solid saves, although I think the first goal was not the
He'd
best.
want that back, yeah.
That was not the best. So I think we exclude him from that. But Henry Kessler playing the role of janitor tonight, cleaning up the mess.
Yes.
A lot of mess in the back, and it seemed like he was the one that was there for a clear or some emergency defending. A goal and a save from Henry Kessler tonight, so I'm fine with him being the man of the match.
Yeah.
And also, you know what else is pretty solid? Golasso Kits. Our sponsor, Golasso Kits. I want to take a quick minute and talk about them. Their mission is to bring unique vintage jerseys to your home with a catalog of jerseys, jackets, scarves, and more from clubs and national teams from over 80 countries in the world. The passion for the beautiful game doesn't have borders, and neither does selection, with every corner of the planet represented. Check out Golasso Kits for their full selection. Make sure you follow them at Golasso Kits on Twitter and their Golasso Kits Instagram for updates on their new inventory. There are currently 6 Revs items in their inventory, so check it out after we're done here tonight. A ton of United States men's national team gear, a lot of United States women's national team gear as well. And in the event you don't find something you love or you're unsure, you can't find your right size, you can go check out their surprise packages where you put in your size and you'll be given a random kit. Chris, you got a random kit. You got a pretty sick Malaysian national team kit, which you love. I saw it. That's pretty fire.
Yeah, it's a really awesome kit. It's something I probably would never have bought if I was just browsing jerseys on my own. But then getting it in person and actually seeing it, and the fact that it was, I think it was $25, and it was such great value for what I paid for it. So I couldn't be happier with that jersey, and I have worn it about 4 times now since I got it a couple weeks ago. So yeah, really loving it.
Malaysia going to the World Cup, and Chris is going to be there. He's getting in on the ground level with his.
I'm
kit.
a new Malaysian fan.
And it was such a great value too, because Chris, you used promo code Revs Recap and you saved 15% off of your order. Promo code Revs Recap at GolassoKit.com. Go check it out. You'll find something you like, and you'll get 15% off your order. When this comes out as a podcast, there will be links and the code in the show notes. All right. Back to the task at hand here, Chris. I didn't line up another question, so I got to look on Twitter real quick.
That's fine.
Eric says,
I wanted to add real quick, since while you go look for another question, I know we were talking about like players of the match, and there's one person that I think that really has not been talked about much so far, and that's Teal Bunbury. He scored a goal. He was relentless all match until I think he was withdrawn later in the match, right? No, he wasn't. So I'm mistaken there. But so he played a full 90, and he was relentless and showing. We had a discussion last week. We had some questions coming in saying should Teal not be a starter anymore, and I was kind of really surprised by that. Like, where are these thoughts coming from? Why does anyone say, or not even a starter, but saying, does this show that Teal shouldn't have any more minutes? And I was defending Teal, saying I think that's kind of ridiculous, and I'm glad that tonight he kind of backed up my support of him, and I thought he had a very solid match. That goal, there was a fantastic play down the middle from Turner to Bowe to Teal. Great first touch by Teal, slotting it home past the 17-year-old goalkeeper. I thought that was such a good play, and I think Teal Bunbury was such a good positive piece around this team, this essentially B team, when there's a lot of negative areas to really look at as well. So I think that he was one real bright spot that I wanted to touch on.
The other thing that Teal Bunbury does really, really well is he is very good at pressing.
Yes. So
for
good.
90 minutes, he gave you 90 minutes of hustle. There was one play that was almost very ugly from Chicago. I don't know what minute it was, but there was a back pass. It was a little slow getting out. The goalkeeper tries to boot it long. Teal runs back and blocks it. It goes out for a free throw, but if he blocks it and it ends up at the feet of a Revolution player, or if he kind of knocks it back towards goal and tip it in, that's a goal. There was another play where in the 43rd minute, there's a long ball down the left side. Teal is in a foot race. He runs around the guy he's in a foot race with, and then I believe it was Navarro on the fire, comes over, slide tackle, knocks it out for a throw in. But if Teal is able to knock that by him and get down the wing, he's got a man over in the center. That is a very huge scoring chance. I know a lot of people were upset at him for missing that chance late in the Saturday game. If you watch that chance, Teal kind of keeps that ball alive twice. He tips it on the baseline, gets it back into the center of the pitch. It leads to 3 or 4 actions, and the ball ends up at his feet, and he misses the shot, but that entire play doesn't happen if Teal Bunbury is not sprinting down the sideline and tapping it in. So Teal, he's been on this team a long time. They've made upgrades, and he's kind of worked his way. He still has a role in this team. He's coming off of the bench, but he's still very valuable to this team. And nights like tonight show you why. He's doing the little things. He's pressing. And that goal he scored, that is a professional finish where it's just calm, cool, collected. It's not a powerful shot, but it's perfectly placed right past the keeper. There's nothing he can do about it. So really good run by Teal. Really good performance all the way around when he doesn't have the best players surrounding him.
And then that play that we're talking about from Saturday night, I mentioned it on the last episode of the podcast as well. If you don't have Teal in the match, whoever's going to be replacing him, if it's Gustavo Bo or someone else, they're not going to even be in that position to even have that attempt on goal right there. So Teal does so much, and he does so much more than what a lot of people necessarily see, because a lot of people seem to hang on his negatives. When he has a bad moment, it's usually pretty glaring, but I think all the good he does makes up for it and way more. So I just want to make sure we give a lot of credit to Teal Bunbury, because I feel like a lot of times he doesn't get the credit he deserves, and he receives a lot of shade when I feel like it's not necessarily warranted.
I think he's a very divisive player because people remember his misses, but people don't remember the little things. And Teal Bunbury is a guy you want on your team, whether or not it's starting
100%
or on the bench. He's certainly a key contributor. And you could always use more strikers. You can always use more forwards. You can always use more strikers. And I'd much rather see Teal Bunbury coming off the bench than Edward Kizza.
Oh, 100%.
I'm going to run through some questions and comments here. I think we've covered some of these before. It's a little less organized since it's over Twitter Spaces tonight. But Eric says, how do we feel about the B team's performance? It wasn't pretty, but it turned out to be just enough to survive an away match against a struggling team. Also, I'm increasingly tired of waiting for Kaptoum to get on the rest of the team's level. We kind of already talked about the B team's performance a little bit. And Chris, you kind of convinced me that Kaptoum probably played a little bit better than I thought he did. I think I was with Eric at the beginning of this podcast that Kaptoum, I think, had a fairly meh performance that, I'm kind of tired of watching him, but I agree with everything he said there. It turned out to be just enough. They held off long enough until the Stars came in, and the Stars won the game. So overall, if I'm grading this B team as a unit, very disjointed at times, didn't love it, I don't want to see it long term, but to say they did just enough until Carles Gil and Gustavo Bo and Bai and Dewan came in and saved the day, absolutely.
Yep.
Chris, anything you want to add real quick?
No, I wish Sean was on with us right now, because I know he was the first one to label Kaptoum as a bust. I jumped on the bandwagon with him, and I was 100% agreeing with him at that point. But tonight's performance maybe has given me a little bit of hope to say there might actually be something to Kaptoum. And the fact that there's so many other players on this roster performing, I think also, while it puts pressure on Kaptoum to perform, to maybe have a spot on the team, I think it also allows him a little bit of freedom to really learn the system and learn MLS as a whole, and gradually get better without being forced into it and making more mistakes than he could be. So I think the Kaptoum thing, I think that might come with time. My tone is starting to change a little bit towards the positive. I just have recent memory bias, of course, after tonight's match. And it wasn't a fantastic or amazing match, but it was solid, and it was good enough by what I would expect from a player in that position.
Eric also says here, Chicago's Navarro appeared to mock Tejan for going down easy after he was called for fouling Buchanan in the 75th. This made Tejan's last run all the more satisfying as he fended off 2 Fire players, including Navarro, before making off the pass off to Gil. Fun to watch. So I did not catch that. I'll have to go back and see that again. But Tejan Buchanan getting the last laugh in Chicago. Potentially, probably his last game ever in Chicago he walks off with the final laugh there. William Richter says, "Winning ugly is better than losing pretty. I got quite enough of the latter from Arsenal the last decade." Absolutely. Sorry, apologies to any Arsenal fans in the chat. That is absolutely rough. Oh, and Revs UK, Mike is going to hop in here. Now, Mike is not an Arsenal fan. He is a Leeds fan. I don't know who's on top of who in the table right now. Arsenal is doing pretty bad. But, Mike, how are you doing tonight? Oh, boy, it's late where you are. My goodness. Do you have work in the morning, Mike? What's going on here?
It's early. It's not late. It's 4 a.m.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, Mike, give us your takeaway. What are your thoughts on tonight's game?
Didn't deserve the 3 points, but as we've all reiterated, obviously we'll happily take them. Obviously, a lot of talk of us missing Matt Polster, which I completely agree with. I think he's literally like a metronome for us in the middle of the park, and I think it was pretty obvious without him in the team. It's not, we don't quite tick as well as we normally do. But I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts or people's thoughts on as potentially obviously missing Tommy McNamara in that starting 11 as well. I think if he was in this game, maybe we wouldn't have had to bring on as many changes as we did. And obviously no one's mentioning the GOAT on the wing as well, in Goateng as well. So I think maybe if them two were in that starting 11, head of maybe Kaptoum and or it might have been a different result going into half time.
I love this take, and I'm so glad you brought up Tommy Mack. He was on my notes of players I wanted to possibly talk about. And the fact that we're sitting here, we just clinched a berth in the playoffs, and we're talking about, I think Tommy McNamara might have been a better option to start this match over the players that did. It's just such a wild position to be in, because when Tommy McNamara came to the Revolution in the offseason, it was 100% more depth piece. Maybe he's going to get a few minutes here, maybe a few minutes there. I don't think anyone really expected him to be the impact player that he's been. And Mike, I 100% agree with you. I think that Tommy Mack would have been a better spot on the lineup. I don't know who necessarily you want to take out between Caicedo or Kaptoum, or you wouldn't take out Caldwell, I guess, for him. But maybe instead of Tristan, maybe you wouldn't have that first goal, because Tristan did have pretty good service on that free kick there, but maybe you'd have a different goal creator or something like that. Tommy Mack brings such a big energy to this team, and I think that's another understated piece to this whole 2021 Revolution team as a whole. And then the Boateng shout, I thought was a great shout. I don't know where he would have fit necessarily on the starting 11 as a sub. When you're looking to get a goal, I think that's a good sub to make, especially when you're looking to maybe rest some players for the game on Saturday versus Orlando. But it didn't bother me as much to not see Boateng in here. But the McNamara piece, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know, Greg, if you have any other opinions, but the McNamara one was it really hitting home for me.
No, if you want to be an MLS Cup champion, you need a good bench. You need more than 11 players. And I think Tommy McNamara fits that group really well. I still don't know who you pair exactly with Polster. It might be Tommy McNamara, but if not, McNamara is a very, very good piece off the bench. And yeah, I think they were missing him a little bit tonight. I think we could have used a little more stability in the midfield. I personally would have played him over, I'll say, Kaptoum. I think you wanted to get Caicedo some minutes tonight and see how he fit in against MLS competition. I think tonight was really just about seeing how this depth played and kind of what needed to be worked on. And I think Caicedo's fitness is a really, really big point. So I think he would have played over Kaptoum. But regardless, it would have been an upgrade for either position. Goateng, he's a loss, huh? They're really missing that kind of spark at the end of the bench there. I'm not sure where he would have fit in tonight. I think he's going to be a late game kind of speedy winger that we're going to see. So I don't know how Bruce would have incorporated him in tonight. I think you would rather see Christian Mafla out there and get him a good look. As opposed to Boateng, who we kind of know it's coming. But overall, I think Mike is absolutely right that not only are you missing your starters, but you're also missing two key depth pieces that would have helped out a lot tonight. Matt, I see Matt unmuted himself. Matt, on this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think McNamara does belong in the starter grouping at this point. I think he's kind of fully won that sort of left-sided shuttler position over Maciel, Kaptoum, Caicedo, etc. I think he's just been in really good form last couple of months. Obviously, you have to rotate him eventually, but he's just he really just complements Polster, and especially when you're using Buchanan as the right-sided shuttler just to get him on the field. That's not really Tajon's natural position. So McNamara's sort of work rate allows like the diamond to get sort of asymmetrical and Tajon further up the field where you want Tajon. So I think, McNamara is a hugely important piece of the team heading towards the playoffs. I think Mike makes a really good point that his absence is notable in a game like this where the midfield was pretty disjointed for most of the game.
Yeah, a good example of how disjointed they are. If you're looking at the passing accuracy too, the Revolution were 72% successful on their passes with a total of 208 passes successful, which is pretty abysmal for this team considering just this past Saturday with essentially the first choice 11, they completed 486 passes on 89%. And a lot of that has to do with the midfield, and a lot of that has to do with Tommy McNamara, in my opinion, as to how this team's going to go and how they're gonna proceed when it comes to the playoff time. I think a player that can make passes and see the plays develop is really essential. And obviously, Carles Gil is a huge part in that as well. Tommy Mac, I think, while I think he was missed tonight, I don't necessarily think maybe he wasn't needed. Obviously, they got the win without him. I'm going to leave it there on Tommy Mac. I think we got some other things to talk about. But, Greg?
Well, I was just going to say, I bet, too, if you look at the passing chart, you bring up the number of passes. I bet if you look up the passing chart, there was a lot of Route 1 long ball passing. There was no Mac Jones dink and dunk, move the ball side to side. There was a lot of booting the ball deep, clearing the ball, and they're kind of missing that piece in the middle. Luis Caicedo, even when he was healthy, I mean, he wasn't very involved in the attack really. He had pretty good pass completion percentages, but he was really more conservative with the ball. Scott Caldwell, is also kind of a guy that is going to make the safe passes side to side. Captum, 93% tonight, but again, not really an impact player who's going to carry it out. He's probably going to push it off the side and want De La Garza or Bai to push it up. So I think McNamara would have made a very big difference in terms of getting the ball up and into Teal Bunbury or Edward Kiz's or Arno Tristansen's feet tonight, and they're kind of missing that link that McNamara would have filled. So. Also, I want to address this because I've gotten 2 tweets about my soccer-specific stadium joke. That is basically, for those of you that are not on Twitter that might not have missed it, there was an anonymous account. I want to get ahead of this before people who aren't on Twitter listen to this and ask me about it. But there was an anonymous account that basically said, my friend is very close to the Crafts, and he confirmed that there's a soccer-specific stadium. And it was a very fake screenshot of a text that said that they were building in, I think it was Everett next year. And I retweeted it and I made fun of it. And the guy deleted his account because it was very obviously a fake. So no news on the soccer specific stadium front. I think that kind of,
unless you want to talk about Taylor Twellman, but
let's not.
We'll let that one rest.
I think what I've learned is let's not feed the trolls. And as much as I love Taylor Twellman, I'm going to include him in that category tonight. We did get a question here on, let's go through Discord questions. Irvin the Punk says, with what we saw on the field, do you think Bruce will try to play his B team again for this Saturday? I can't imagine they do. I think the A team is pretty well rested. I don't even know. I bet we revert back to a lineup from Saturday just because it's Orlando. I think Bruce wants to see how this team measures up to a more competitive team. I believe it's on the road as well. So that is going to be a very, very tough game, a rematch of the playoffs last year. Chris, any thoughts on that, or do you expect to see the A-team on Saturday?
Yeah, 100% expect to see the A-team. That's actually, it's not a road game, just to be clear. It's in Gillette, 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday, Eastern time. And I expect a full team. Look, Bruce took this game as more of a throwaway game, I think, when he's looking at the lineup, say we need to really rest players. When you're looking at the upcoming matches, you have Chicago and you have Orlando. Orlando's obviously a much better team this season than Chicago. You're going to rest players against the weaker team that comes up in the middle of the week. It makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about the gameplay that Bruce rolled out against Columbus when he didn't make any subs until I think the 82nd minute, where it was essentially the first 11 playing. Against Orlando, I expect to see this, essentially the same roster as what we saw in Columbus. Maybe one or two changes here and there, something small, but overall, it's going to be the strongest 11 that Bruce can put out.
We did get a question here on Discord from TSP11 tonight. Was one where the refs look extremely disorganized in their own half. What were the strongest contributing factors for this? I believe we've covered this a little bit. I think missing Polster and Farrell were big factors. Tommy McNamara not being able to pass out of the back and carry the ball out your third is a big issue too. And then kind of some discoordination there from, it seemed like Mafla and Caicedo, which again, I believe is what happened there. You're going to have to go back and rewatch it, but it seemed like there were some spaces in behind Mafla where he just wasn't there or was getting beat there. There seemed to be some through balls getting through there. So, I don't think we expect to see it from the A team. We did get a question here, 2 straight weeks of this team from Terminator on Discord, 2 straight weeks of the team looking bad / coasting. Is this a cause for concern going forward or just a phase they are going through towards glory? Chris, I'll go to you. And Matt, jump in after Chris if you have any thoughts on this. But Chris, any concerns about the Revolution tying Columbus and then having this kind of rough win in Chicago?
No, not really. Look, the match against Columbus, the Revolution outplayed the Crew hands down. I think the shots were, I have the matchup right here. It was 33 total shots. The issue was putting the shots on frame. I think there was only 7 shots on frame against Columbus. They outplayed them. Expected goals versus Columbus was almost 3, 27 chances created. Again, almost 500 total accurate passes. They played a very good game and really controlled the entire match, over 60% possession. And that's what you expect the first team to do, the first choice 11. And tonight, obviously, you're not rolling with that. In Chicago, while we're giving them a bit of flack saying, they're not a very good team, they still are a team full of MLS level professionals, and they have some very good players on their team. Some very solid finishers as well. When you're talking Madron and you're talking Baric, Navarro, it's a really good team to be rolling out a roster with 9 changes and essentially putting out your B team. So overall, no, there's not a lot of concern. I don't think there's a lot of coasting. Even the B team, I thought, showed a lot of heart and a lot of effort. The only times that they conceded goals was when they seemed to shut off for a couple minutes. And other than that, it really wasn't a lot of coasting. Chicago did play a good game. Credit to them. At home, a struggling team really, really fighting to get 3 points that they really needed. So I'm not concerned. I don't think they're coasting. I kind of disagree with that comment a bit.
I think the better way to put it, and someone, I forget who put it earlier, but maybe turning off at certain moments, letting the moment get a little bit ahead. So I think it might be just being inconsistent, not playing a full 90. But I believe Any Revs UK has another comment here. Mike, I think you can unmute yourself. You should be able to talk. Mike, what are your thoughts here?
And it wasn't really on the subject you were just talking about, but I kind of want to just get people's opinions on what is next for Kizza, because obviously he's had a few games now starting, and I've, in my opinion, I've not really seen anything that like we've not seen from like Renix before, or he's not offered us anything more than what we've seen from Renix with his time with the first team.
Well, yeah, and I think I talked about this last time I was on the podcast. I really haven't seen anything that I love about him. Now, when you are, poacher, I think what we were kind of sold on Kizza when he was drafted was this is an in-the-box player. This is a guy that he's able to get the shots on frame. So if you give him service, he's going to put it on frame. He's going to score. That's kind of, I think, what the scouting report was on him when he was drafted. What we've kind of seen a lot of him is he's coming in when Bo and Boopsa need a rest. Him and Teal, they kind of boot the ball up to him and Teal. And his skills just don't seem – he's very raw, in my opinion. His ball skills need a little bit of work. He just kind of seems to not be in the right spot, the right time where you need him to be. His touch is a little poor. I think there was the assist he made where he really should have controlled it and scored it, and his touch was so bad it kind of got away from him, and he was able to tap it out for an assist. So I think that's his one assist so far, and that might be his career highlight. So I think right now the role he's playing is not fitting to his skills, so to speak. I'll pull up my line about Caicedo too, back when he was on the team, that you want him, the fewer touches he has, the better. Kizza kind of might be just kind of like a poacher, one-timing type of player that you need to give him good service. And when he plays, it's not with the best lineup, and he's not getting in those spots where you need him to be. So I think he's a project. I don't want to see him in the playoffs. I'd almost, when you need to rest players, I'd almost rather you put in another midfielder, have Teal be the lone striker, and put in a Tommy McNamara somewhere, or go to a 4-2-3-1 or something to that effect. Put in Boateng. And so I want to see Kizza kind of down at Revs 2 a little bit and kind of develop a little bit more there. I'm not willing to write him off just yet, but I certainly think he's a project. Chris, any thought? But I agree with you, Mike. I have not been impressed with anything we've seen from Kizza so far, but I'm willing to give him some leash. Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're talking about letting him play with Revs 2, and I think that's not a bad solution. So far, he's played in 7 different matches with Revs 2. He's scored 4 goals, which is a good sign for a striker to be putting in 4 goals in 7 appearances. It's with the first team that he's really showing his struggles. And I think a lot of that is just, I feel like the rest of the team doesn't necessarily have as much confidence in him. And maybe he's not exuding the confidence himself either to say, hey, I got this, give me the ball, let me take it. I don't think there's necessarily a whole lot of chances thrown his way, which might play a factor in the fact that he's not necessarily getting a lot of good stats. And his appearances that he's getting, he's not necessarily getting a lot of minutes either. So, he has 11 appearances so far for the first team, but that's only 265 minutes. And it's not much. And if you're looking at the USL League One, like I said, it's 7 appearances, but he's got 569 minutes played. So it's a much bigger difference there. Maybe once he starts putting some balls in the net, maybe he can see him getting to some sort of streakiness, some sort of patterns developing. But overall, it's currently just a project situation. And Greg, I'm with you. I don't want to see him necessarily in the playoffs at this time, at this stage in his career. But I think he's a promising prospect. I think looking at his college highlight reel, his stats lines that he was putting up, I think it was for Penn State or
I think it was
Pittsburgh. Pitt, yeah, it was for Pitt, and he put up a lot of really good stats for Pitt. He was scoring a lot of goals, and a lot of teams saw him as potentially the number 1 player coming out of the draft. I think there was some behavioral issues or something like that maybe allowed him to slide. But
yeah, well, I want to kind of he left school early. There was no behavioral. There was rumors. He left school early, but he's on good standing with the he was on good standing with the college. I think a lot of people speculated that something happened, which is why he left early, but it was unrelated personal reasons, and character issues are not an issue with him, from my understanding.
That's good to know. Yeah, you learn something new every day, and that's what I've learned today. I think Kizza might have a future. I'm not sure if it's MLS for him yet, but at least USL, I think he can at least compete at that level currently. So
yeah, and by the way, Chris, if you ever come visit me in Pennsylvania, you got to make sure you don't get Penn State and Pitt confused. That's not a very good thing. But the one thing I will say that is concerning about Kizza is that he does hold an international roster spot. So I think,
yes,
I'm fine with him being here for year 2, but you wonder if that might have an effect in the off-season decisions. Matt, I see you're still on speaker. Do you have any thoughts on Kizza? I want to go to you too, since we're in a bit of a roundtable. But any thoughts on Kizza? Anything you like so far?
I mean, yeah, we haven't really seen anything from him with the first team that's productive, or at least intentionally productive. But clearly they see something in him in training and with the second team, because like Mike mentioned, he is getting these minutes over Renix, who going into the season you would have thought would be that sort of 4th striker on the roster. So they clearly see a lot of potential in him, and obviously, like Chris said, his goal scoring record for Pitt was pretty outrageous. So he might be a late bloomer. I think he just needs to get used to the pace of play in MLS compared to college. But yeah, I think it's too early to tell. It's more of a next year kind of thing, and they're just trying to get a minutes in these sort of situations when there's lots of squad rotation and build them up. But yeah, it is surprising that it's him rather than Renix in that role on the roster.
And you know, once I know we saw a cameo from Damian Rivera earlier this season. I'm a little surprised he hasn't been called up recently too for a game like this. I'd like to see a little bit more of him. I guess it doesn't really work out. They kind of wanted two strikers, but you're right. It's, you know, with Kiz's performances so far, you kind of think maybe we would see Justin Rennicks get a cameo here or there, but it seems like the arena. The arena tenure, Rennicks kind of dropped down. It's a bit of an afterthought, unfortunately, which is a real shame considering how highly he was touted by some people like me.
Right. He scored a big goal in the U20 World Cup.
Yeah, 2 years ago. 2 years ago,
right.
He was scoring at the U20 World Cup, and now he can't sniff MLS action. It's absolutely crazy.
I will say at that U20 World Cup, too, he was playing alongside Indiana Vasilev, who's now doing fairly well over at Inter Miami. So to see how Indiana has developed and compare it to how Rennicks has not developed, I guess. You know, I think that he just has a bit more maturing to do, and maybe we see something more out of Rennicks in the future, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Right. Either way, it's not an issue for this playoff run, because once the playoff starts, it's going to be, you know, Bo, Buxa, and Bunbury as your three forward options that you actually use in those more high pressure games.
Absolutely. There's so much depth there. I can't imagine he sniffs the playoffs at all. All right, let's get to some other ones. It's getting late. I know we have bedtime. Mike, I mean, I'm sure he's slugging it out there over in the UK, so I want to get through some final questions here. Not blue, not green. It's teal. Asked us what happened to Mafla in the second half. Dude just disappeared. I would have to really go back and look at the second half because I didn't know. I know he had a cross there in the second half. I didn't notice him disappearing, but I guess that might just be that I didn't notice him too much. I thought he played pretty decently. I think we talked about him extensively at the beginning, but I didn't notice anything in the second half that maybe. I'm trying to think if there was something that happened that I guess the second goal, the ball gets in behind him, but I can't think of anything. So I'll have to take a pass on that one. Sorry on that question. Michelle says, did this game briefly reignite our rivalry with Chicago? Because I feel it did. Well, Matt, you're as the president of one of the supporters groups. I guess you probably have a good pulse on who our rivals are. Did this briefly reignite our rivalry with Chicago? And if it did, how great did it feel that we just completely killed their hopes at the death there?
Oh, I've never stopped hating Chicago, even when they're irrelevant. My hatred for them burns deep. So it's never an issue for me to have it need to be reignited. But yeah, it did add a little extra joy, the fact that it was them, and that we got to pull it away from them in the last moments there.
For the last few meetings with Chicago, it's been some draws. So tonight to get them away with a victory, it's been really nice. And it really did feel like there was some sort of rivalry going on. I think somewhere between the 60th, maybe after the 64th minute, once it was level, up until the Revs pulled away in an extra time there. And it was really exciting. And it kind of felt almost like a match from five or more years ago between the Revs and Chicago, where it really was just an on-field battle, and you could just feel the tension between the two teams. It was such an exciting match from just a spectator's perspective, and to be a Revs fan and to see the Revs come out on top, it just makes it that much sweeter.
For sure.
Who aren't the Revs, getting chippy with and getting physical with these days? Though it feels like every team
the West Coast
is our rival. yeah, we're not rivals with Vancouver yet. I'll give them that. But, no, the one thing I was actually thinking about it. Well, first off, I think it means a lot to the Revs that they got this win after having that disappointing draw to start the season. I feel like that, to come away out of Chicago with 2 points in 2 games and a pair of 2-2 draws with a handful of defensive mistakes, I think that would have, just looking back, it would look bad. I don't know if it would have had an impact going forward, but I think that would have taken some wins out of the sails. But the one thing I will say in terms of Chicago being a rivalry is I think back to our Jeff Larenowitz interview where we asked him about his time in Chicago, and he kind of said, the fans never really liked me because to them I was always Jeff from New England, and so I that comment always kind of stuck with me. That even though it is not the height of the New England-Chicago rivalry, it's still kind of always there a little bit. So
we've accepted Matt Polster though, and I think I can ignore his years in Chicago, because I think the Revs might have been somewhat irrelevant when he was with Chicago anyway.
Matt has been redeemed. I will give him that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
He scored a great goal against the Revs, if I remember correctly, as an overlapping right back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he's more than canceled that out at this point.
Yeah.
Left-footed, I believe he just like comes flying in and he cuts across the center and just whips in a beautiful left-footed shot. Boy, I'm dating myself. That must have been 2016, 2017, but yeah. Traeger Girardi has a couple of questions here. Now that we know we have two full teams that can play at an MLS level, could we see an inter-squad scrimmage for the fans to stay fresh during their layoff while waiting for their playoff opponent to emerge? And then he tags the Revs and says, please make it happen. I'd be all for that. And I also will go a step further in saying I saw Atlanta open to practice 2 supporters. So I want to see a scrimmage, away kits versus home kits. Kind of a full 11-on-11. I said let's make it happen. I'm all for it. The more soccer, the better. Maybe we can even get Justin Rennicks in this game. Who knows? We got another question here. Traeger. Oh, well, we got to cover this too. I can't believe it's been an hour and 10 before we got into this, but Traeger mentions if the logo that, and he tags someone, has as his profile picture, I'd be on board. The R with the sash through it misses the mark. We got to do logo talk. The rebrand has been rumored to come out again. I don't know why it came out again this week. I kind of missed something. I was off Twitter a little bit, but it has popped back up in MLS. In case you were not on Twitter, MLS tweeted out, I think it was FIFA ratings with Carles heel, his card or his photo, and they were supposed to put the Revolution logo next to it, and instead they put up the rumored rebranded crest, which came out last May or last June. So I'm on the record of saying I like it. I don't love it. I would like to keep as much MLS 1.0 stuff as possible. So I am pro crown flag, but I'm not completely upset about it. And I think the important thing is that they're keeping the name New England Revolution, and they're not New England United. So Matt, I'll defer to you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this alleged rebrand that is not confirmed, but pretty much everyone has confirmed it?
Yeah, I'm with you. The first time I saw the leak, or rumored leak rather, my initial reaction was honestly relief that the name was still there, regardless of what the design was. Just because, yeah, it's always been a worry that they'd turn into, Boston FC or something lame like that and kind of cast away all this rich history we've built up. And as far as the design itself, I think it's pretty good. Obviously, I love the cran flag as a so bad it's good sort of meme situation logo, but as a graphic designer, I can't actually endorse the cran flag as a long-term design option. As it would just be unnatural. But I do love the cran flag discourse. I think I prefer just the isolated sort of R with the bunting rather than the full circle badge. So hopefully over time they kind of narrow in on that as people get used to it. But I think it's a nice enough design. And thank goodness they kept the name. Oh, I would be so disappointed if they changed the name.
After we got Montreal Club de Foot or whatever that is, and they got rid of Montreal Impact, I kind of that was my horror moment where I kind of realized that New England Revolution might go away and we might be New England. And then the Rochester Rhinos. That was also my horrific moment of wow, these people are actually changing team names that don't need to be changed. And there's already a bit of a brand there that they don't need to kind of shoot themselves in the foot and make these changes. So, I think we kind of say they'd never change the name New England Revolution, but these other clubs are doing that, and it's a bit horrific to me. So I'm with you on that one, Matt. Chris, anything to add? I don't know if anyone else in the chat. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add on this rebranding crest. If anyone else wants to jump in and give their thought on the logo, I figure this is a hot button topic. But Chris, what are your thoughts on the rebrand here?
Yeah, look, I made an entire video over this on Revs Revolt when the first leak came out. I don't even remember how long ago this was. That video is basically going over the changes in the logo, what I thought of it, my initial reactions, and I've had a lot of time now to marinate in it since that initial leak came out months ago. Overall, I think it's a fine logo, and I think that it's a good decision to rebrand. I love the crayon flag. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be a part of me forever. It's going to be a part of all of us Revolution fans, supporters alike. And the fact that that's going to be going away on the face of the club is a little bit sad to see. But you think the league is evolving so much and so rapidly. I think changing your branding is also a way of establishing growth amongst yourself and not saying we're still the same old 1996 team from MLS 1.0 where we used to do penalty shootouts with a run-up type deal. All that funny stuff. We're not just a fun and games type team anymore. We're a serious team. And to really kind of abandon that, it had to have been a very difficult decision to make. And I think the new logo, assuming the leak is correct, could have been better, but I don't hate it. I'm not against it. And I think it was overall the right decision to move into some sort of new branding overall. And I think to reiterate what everyone else is thinking, we're just all really happy that we're still the Revolution and not New England United or something like that. Although I guess New England would probably be one of the few places that you could say it's a united group because it's 6 states coming together. But it doesn't really work so much in DC or other places like that. Anyways, I'll stop that right there. If anyone else has anything they wanted to chime in on, I'd love to hear it.
I think what we got to do is we got to mix the rebrand with what Matt suggested earlier, where we build a statue of Carles Gil. We just need to make Carles Gil like our new badge, kind of like how Jerry West is the NBA logo. I think we should just make Carles Gil the Revolution badge going forward. It's just kind of like an outline of Carles Gil, making an insane pass or something like that. I think that is a perfectly great idea. So I think that kind of wraps us up here. Oh, Mike does have one more question. It's a good one to go out on. He asks us, where can I find vintage soccer kits for sale in the United States? Matt, do you have any ideas where Mike can find vintage soccer kits for sale in the United States?
I heard about this place called Golasso Kits. Is that a place that exists?
I think so.
Okay.
I think they have a promo code. I don't know if you know it offhand, but
I think you're gonna need that. You're gonna need to repeat that for me.
I think they have a promo code. I believe it's Revs Recap. You get 15% off your order. So Golasso Kits, 15% off your order when you use promo code Revs Recap. So you'll definitely have to check that out, Mike. I think that's from what I hear, that's a very, very reliable distributor of soccer gear, kits, scarves, whatever you need. It's going to be there for you. So we are getting close to my bedtime here at midnight. So I think it's time to wrap it up. Chris, actually, Matt, you basically were co-hosting this podcast. We appreciate you hopping on. We had you on earlier this year. I've actually been telling Chris and Sean we need to get Matt back on soon. And I'm very glad you hopped on, and I'm very glad you also nailed that prediction in the pregame Twitter Spaces. Matt, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find my very rare tweets at 321 Matt. Very infrequent tweeter, but that's where to find me. And yeah, I would absolutely love to be back on. Maybe when the Revs clinch the Shield, we can go deep into some Shield lore. That'd be fun.
And you can follow the Midnight Riders at Midnight Riders. So definitely do that too. I also see the Rebellion in here as well. Follow the Rebellion at the Rebellion. Appreciate their support and sticking it out with us through this podcast. Chris, I don't know if you're muted, so you might be away from the computer, but where can people find you on social media?
I'm never far away. I'm never far away. You can always find me over on Twitter at Chris Valukas, or if you want to just talk soccer exclusively and ignore all my personal stuff, it's at Rose Revolt.
And then Mike, I'm also going to count you as a co-host here. You had some very good points today. I don't know if you've fallen asleep. You're probably asleep at your desk or you're going to get coffee because it's like 6 a.m. over there. Oh, unmuted. Mike, where can people find you on Twitter? And also, I know you have a YouTube channel. Go ahead and promote your stuff and where people can find you on social.
Yeah, it's just at AnyRevsUK, both on Twitter and on YouTube, although I haven't been producing much content recently because of work schedules and stuff, but there is some old stuff that you might be interested on there.
Yeah, work gets the best of you sometimes. I've been on, I think, 2 podcasts the last 2 months. A lot of traveling, a lot of work lately. It happens. But when you do have new videos, make sure you're subscribed to Mike so you can follow along there. And you can follow us at Revolution Recap on Twitter. We also have a Revolution Recap Instagram and Facebook page, so make sure you're following us there. Please also take a moment to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you're listening to podcasts. And also, please rate and review us. We always appreciate 5-star reviews, and it helps us grow very much. And if you know someone who is looking for a Revolution podcast, give us a shout. There aren't a lot of Revolution podcasts. We need more coverage. God knows the mainstream Boston media is not going to be doing it. So please, if you know anyone looking for more Revs talk, please give us a shout. So that just about does it. There is an Orlando game on Saturday, I believe. I didn't write it down.
Saturday at 7 p.m.
Saturday at 7 p.m. And I know Sean Donahue is going to be hosting that podcast. So we will have a new podcast for you either Sunday or Monday recapping that game. Until then, for everyone listening and for everyone who has stuck it out in this hour plus in this Twitter Spaces, thank you all for listening, and go Revs.